A queen sits on a throne built from 1,000 swords, and it's already cutting her. Rhaenyra Targaryen just won a war she didn't even fight in person, and somehow that's the easy part. In the span of one single day, she'll be lied to by a 10-year-old boy pretending to be someone he's not. She'll be publicly humiliated by the most powerful religious leader in Westeros, and she'll discover her own treasury has vanished into thin air. Every choice she makes today plants a seed that's going to grow into betrayal, rebellion, or worse. And the scariest part? She doesn't even know it yet. Rhaenyra Targaryen has the throne. What she doesn't have is control, and Episode 4 wastes no time proving it. The episode opens with Daemon Targaryen riding straight into enemy territory without an army at his back, demanding the surrender of the High Tower forces led by Ormund High Tower, Alicent's cousin. It's a bold move, but when you're backed by 3 dragons capable of melting 15,000 soldiers in minutes, bold starts to look a lot like common sense. Ormund's army had already been through a brutal campaign, having fought their way up from Old Town, surviving battles along the river, and losing men like Lord Beesbury's forces along the way. At one point they were nearly wiped out entirely until Prince Daeron arrived on his dragon and turned the tide, earning him a knighthood and a new nickname, Daeron the Daring. It's a strange twist of fate considering what history says about a very different Daeron Targaryen decades later, a man remembered as anything but brave. Now, with his allies scattered, his nephews missing, and his uncle Otto already dead by the new queen's own hand, Ormund has nothing left to fight with. So when Rhaenyra offers clemency in exchange for loyalty, he takes it. He bends the knee. He swears the words. And almost immediately, you get the sense that none of it means anything, because peace bought this cheaply rarely holds. This single decision, letting the High Tower army walk away instead of destroying them, is going to come back and bite Rhaenyra hard, because that same army will later seize the town of Tumbleton and use its people as hostages. Daemon wanted them burned where they stood. Rhaenyra wanted to be remembered as merciful, like her father before her, rather than ruthless like the man standing next to her. But mercy has a price, and Episode 4 spends its entire runtime showing us exactly what that price looks like. Before Ormund leaves, Daemon demands one more thing. Daeron, the 4th child of Viserys and Alicent, a boy who's been fostered in Old Town his entire life, and who suddenly matters more than anyone realized. With Aemond and Aegon still missing, Daeron becomes the most important pawn on the board, a legitimate male heir who could, under the old precedent set at the Great Council, leapfrog every woman in the family for the throne. Rhaenyra takes the boy into her custody, planning to send him to the Wall to take the Black, sparing his life while neutralizing the threat he represents. It's meant to be another act of mercy. It's meant to prove she's better than the people who tried to take her crown. Except there's a problem nobody in that room realizes yet. The boy isn't Daeron. He's an impostor, a stand-in dressed up and coached to fool everyone, while the real Daeron remains safely hidden under Ormund's protection. It's a masterstroke of deception, quiet and simple, and Rhaenyra walks right into it without a single clue. This fake Daeron was threatened, told his real mother would be executed if he broke character, and so he plays along, eating the food, accepting the shelter, saying nothing. Alicent knows immediately that this isn't her son. She's only seen him a handful of times in 5 years, but a mother knows. And yet she says nothing either, because what would saying something even accomplish at this point? The rats have already returned to King's Landing, both literally and symbolically. Ever since the assassination of Jaehaerys during the Blood and Cheese incident, rat catchers have been banned from the Red Keep, and now the vermin are back, scurrying through walls that used to belong to the Greens. They represent everything rotting inside this city, the backstabbing, the decay of institutions, the quiet betrayals waiting behind every closed door. Rhaenyra herself hasn't set foot in the king's chambers in nearly a year, not since watching her father die in that same room. She says the air is thick with ghosts, and she chooses instead to sleep in Daemon's chambers, avoiding a room that reminds her too much of what she's lost and what she's inherited. As she walks toward the small council with Daemon at her side, the staff are already tearing down every banner and symbol tied to the Greens, cloth that will be burned in a fire by the episode's end. And throughout this entire hour, a bell tolls again and again, at least a dozen times by the count, each ring landing like judgment. Bells often mark endings. Maybe it's the end of Aegon's claim. Maybe it's foreshadowing something far worse for Rhaenyra herself. Either way, it's impossible to ignore. a constant reminder that every decision she makes today is being weighed by something bigger than her. If the throne itself wasn't warning enough, the small council meeting that follows makes it painfully clear just how broken this kingdom really is. The crown's treasury is gone. Grand Maester Orwyle reveals that former Master of Coin Tyland Lannister had the gold split up and smuggled out of the city before the fall of King's Landing. There's barely enough left to fund the court for 2 weeks. Tyland himself was last seen thrown from a ship during the brutal Battle of the Gullet, and nobody knows if he's alive or dead. If the books are anything to go by, he might already be wandering the countryside among the remnants of the Triarchy. And with Aemond and Aegon both last spotted heading toward Rook's Rest, a reunion there wouldn't be shocking. Then there's the matter of Rhaenyra's coronation, something she desperately wants because she needs the realm to see, without question, who's sitting on that throne now. But King's Landing has just survived a punishing blockade, one that Rhaenyra herself enforced, and the food that did make it through was hoarded by nobles while the small folk starved. Throwing an elaborate coronation right now would be like lighting a match in a room full of gas. So she compromises. Instead of a full coronation, she asks the High Septon to simply anoint her, a smaller ceremony that still carries enormous weight, because an anointment isn't just political, it's spiritual. It tells the realm that the gods themselves have chosen her. And this is where things start to unravel. The High Septon refuses. Aegon was already anointed, and since nobody has actually confirmed his death, the faith can't recognize 2 monarchs at once. Rhaenyra tries to argue that her victory alone proves divine favor, that a dragon appearing for her in her darkest hour was practically a sign from the gods. But the High Septon isn't interested in dragons. To the faith, dragons have always been an abomination, unnatural power born from darkness, the very thing that fuels a ruler's hunger for control. Rhaenyra could force the issue. She could threaten him. But making an enemy of the faith right now, with the small folk already one spark away from open rebellion, would be catastrophic. So the anointment gets shelved, and Rhaenyra is left standing there with a throne but no blessing, a crown but no legitimacy in the eyes of half the realm. What Rhaenyra doesn't know is that Aegon is still out there somewhere, and he's carrying something that could destroy everything she's built. The crown of Aegon the Conqueror himself. Physical proof of his identity that no impostor claim could ever explain away. Meanwhile, the small council keeps unraveling piece by piece. Rhaenyra's original council on Dragonstone betrayed her during her imprisonment at the Battle of the Gullet, and now an entirely new one has to be built from scratch, likely pulling in Corlys Valyrian, Daemon, and Mysaria. Speaking of Corlys, he brings his 2 bastard sons, Adam and Alan, to a private dinner and asks Rhaenyra to legitimize them, letting them officially carry the Valyrian name. Both of them fought and bled for her cause. Adam even rides a dragon now. It should be an easy yes. But Rhaenyra can't risk it. Not when her own children's legitimacy is already a whispered scandal across the realm. Elevating bastards right now would only invite more scrutiny onto her own family. So she refuses, and you can see it land on Corlys like a betrayal. A man who has already sacrificed his wife, his children, his castle, and his fleet for her cause, told that even a name is too much to ask for. It's the kind of decision that could quietly push a powerful ally toward the other side of this war. And Corlys isn't the only one left frustrated. Ulf and Hugh, 2 dragonseeds who now command real power thanks to the dragons they claimed, come looking for recognition too. Ulf wants the Targaryen name, convinced he's the bastard son of Baelon. Rhaenyra shuts that down immediately. He'll be knighted instead, taking the name Ulf the White, but he gets no castle, no real status, nothing but a title that sounds impressive and means very little. Hugh fares even worse. He asks about housing for his family and is offered a home on Visenya's Hill, a modest merchant district, a subtle insult compared to the wealth of Aegon's High Hill where the true nobility lives. Hugh doesn't know it yet, but his wife has already fled the city with her brother, heading toward Tumbleton, the very town Ormund's forces have taken hostage. If Rhaenyra ever orders that town burned, Hugh is going to be standing in the middle of an impossible choice between loyalty to his queen and loyalty to his family. By the time Rhaenyra sits down to hold her first day of petitions, it's obvious that ruling is nothing like she imagined. Something as small as deciding who gets access to sheep, animals needed both to feed the dragons and to feed the people, becomes a political minefield where every decision creates a new enemy. The camera lingers on her hands gripping the throne, shaking, worn down not just by stress, but by something more physical too, a subtle nod to the books where the Iron Throne is known to draw blood from anyone who sits upon it. a wound many in Westeros read as an omen, a sign the throne itself is rejecting its ruler. Kings before her carried the same scars. It didn't end well for most of them. The tension inside the small council only grows worse as Mysaria and Daemon clash over what to do about the suffering small folk. Two people who used to share a bed, now unable to agree on anything except how much they distrust each other. When Rhaenyra turns to Corlys for guidance, he simply defers to her judgment. A strange move for a man usually so opinionated, and it's hard not to wonder if his silence is really about his sons and the answer he just received. Baela returns from her scouting mission around this time too. She hasn't found Vhagar or Sheepstealer, but she has found Sunfire, Aegon's dragon, lying dead and decaying, or so it appears. It's a detail worth remembering, because dead dragons in this story have a habit of turning out to be very much alive. Mysaria eventually asks Rhaenyra what her father would have done in this exact situation, and Rhaenyra decides the answer is simple: throw a banquet. So she does, inviting the city's lesser lords to a dinner that is, in every sense of the word, deeply uncomfortable, serving food scavenged from the very rats infesting the Red Keep, while the gold cloaks quietly reclaim the grain hoarded by the wealthy. It's here that Ulf, Hugh, and Adam formally swear their loyalty, kneeling before Daemon as he knights them using words that will echo again decades later in a very different trial. Alicent, meanwhile, is dealt one final blow. She asks that her father Otto's remains be sent to Oldtown to rest beside his wife, and surprisingly, Rhaenyra agrees, a small mercy toward the very man who orchestrated her downfall. The two women sit down together afterward, and Rhaenyra asks Alicent how she managed to rule the realm during Viserys' illness. The answer isn't comforting. Alicent tells her plainly that ruling means making choices that will cost people their lives, choices that will change who you are whether you want them to or not. Rhaenyra insists the throne won't change her. It's the kind of statement that never ends well in this story. While Rhaenyra fights to hold the capital together, Daemon's mind is already somewhere else entirely, dreaming of